Could you tell us what you learned from Steve Jobs about taking vacations? How did Steve Jobs take vacations?
Well, I don't know of all of his vacations. I know of the vacations he took while we were together at Apple for 10 years. And what was really happening was, Steve would go on vacation, and in my early days there, I would be like, yes, he's going on vacation. It's great. We're not going to have to hear from him for 7 or 14 days or whatever the case may be. Well, that dream met reality, and the reality was very different. It turned out that Steve, he would go on vacation. He would usually vacation at 1 or 2 places, and he'd go to the same places all the time. That's what he liked, and that's all good. And he would go silent for the first kind of 24, 48 hours. He would be gone. He would be in transit. He would be with his family, what have you. For those first 48 hours, you wouldn't hear anything, maybe 72. But somewhere right after that, you started getting calls. It wasn't emails, it was calls from Steve. And Steve would be on vacation, and he would be pondering where the next product, the next direction for Apple, new technologies, things he's reading. He used that vacation as a time to kind of expand his thinking and get outside of the Apple, the day-to-day and the projects that we all knew and loved. Or maybe there was a couple of things to improve on the projects we were working on. But he would start thinking about, let's go buy a music company, or should we go and do this other kind of product, or what technology will it take to do this? Because he's also reading. He's reading or he's listening to others saying different technologies. So he would be calling, you would be like Google for him. You're like, hey, what is the latest on this? And you're like, okay, Steve, here's what we know. I don't know that. I can go get back to you. He's like, let me know when you know. Send me an email on that. And then 15 minutes later, he might call back with a different idea. And so it was literally while he was on vacation during reasonable hours. This wasn't crazy hours. But you might hear from him on vacation 5 or 6 times, depending on what he was thinking about at that time per day. Could be as much as maybe 0 per day, but sooner or later along that vacation, he would call you and want to brainstorm something, or want a piece of knowledge, or want to know the latest about something that was related to some idea he had in his head. And so you loved it because you got to talk to him about all kinds of things that weren't the day-to-day. But at the other times, you were like, okay, Steve, you need to be on vacation. And then 2 is, how much work are we going to have when you come back? Besides the incredible mountain of work we're already on top of, or trying to get on top of.
So why did you lead with that, and why write this particular chapter? Because flashing back again to our first conversation, which I encourage people to read, I'm going to try to not overlap too much with that. But back at General Magic, you had a certain, let's say, approach to work, which was high volume, high intensity, kind of 10 out of 10. And that seems to have changed over time. And just for people who have no idea what General Magic is, I just want to say, and tell me if this is off base, but it's kind of like Jodorowsky's Dune in a sense, where people don't understand that was an attempt at making Dune, which failed, but the talent that was assembled ended up being this incredible diaspora of kind of technical innovation that then spread all over the place. You had like Geiger, creating Alien and so on. So General Magic was somewhat like that, I would say, the genesis of a lot of amazing careers.
It's a great analogy. Yeah, great analogy.
So why did you lead with that story in that chapter, and why even write that chapter?
For me, I went through that personal struggle. And I think a lot of people do, I need to work harder than everyone else and spend more time working. So I was working 80, 100, 110 hours a week kind of thing, because that's what I thought needed to happen. I thought I needed to prove myself through the number of hours, through the amount of work that I could get done. And I was also really passionate and kind of like, you're a kid in the candy store. Like for me, I'm a geek, right? I'm like, I could do this, I could do that, and I get to work on this. And the more hours I got at there, I could go and work and learn, right, from all of these great people around me. So one thing I had to learn how to do the work. And the other one is doing the work, right? And learning how to do it at a professional level, like my heroes around me would do. So there was a lot of learning. And, when you go to school, but you're also doing your studying and all the other stuff. So it was a little bit more than you going to a university, but your first jobs are really like that. You spend a lot of time, but you also start to learn how to be productive. Okay. And what being productive means and doing a great job versus just being there a lot of hours. And so that's where it all hit for me. I will say this. I was undiagnosed ADHD at that time frame. I was in General Magic. And ultimately, a couple of years later, then I actually figured out what was going on. So I was trying to do my work and perform at a professional level, learn the work. And I had ADHD across all of it. So if you know anything about writing code, right? Writing code and being in the details. And if your mind's always going, oh my God, it made everything harder, right? So it was all of those things compounded. And so that chapter is really about, here's where I was. Maybe you're experiencing a lot of this yourself. And here's where a more balanced approach. Now, it's not your typical work-life daily balance, but here's a way to do it to be high performing, do amazing things, but to also give yourself the right amount per day, as well as per year of time off, right? And time to think and realize that when you get to go away from a certain activity you're doing every time, you might actually be able to think about it more clearly and come up with the answers more clearly if you're away from it as opposed to into it all the time.